Did you just hear that? The government of Cuba is planning, and if you missed the Fox News, you don't know what I'm talking about. So, a quick recap. They're so alarmed about the spread of the Zika virus. President Castro, that's Raul, the younger brother of the founder of that socialist republic. Yes, the socialist paradise of Cuba. President Castro has ordered 8,000 troops to deal with Zika. Now, I don't know how you do that. What do? Stand over at the coastline and say, aha, there's a virus. Don't come in. All right, that's exaggerating that. But their goal is to go out there and try to work on helping eradicate this virus or limit its spread. One of the latest threats from Zika happens to be paralysis. So you've got a communist country here in the Western Hemisphere that is going to be doing this to protect its people from this health threat, this serious health threat, which could leave babies deformed or leave adults perhaps paralyzed, and may even, at some point, if somebody's already ill with something else, could lead to their premature death. So this is a government looking out for its people. Maybe not always, but in this case it is. 8 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 39. We mentioned in the last hour of the program, our government, its main responsibility is to protect the people of the United States, to provide for the common defense. And yet Lefty keeps saying that we have to bring people into this country. Oh, we have to show some compassion. Well, yeah, but what if they're dangerous and they plan to kill us in the name of Allah? Well, that's not nice to say that. And you know what? We're bad people too. We did the Crusades. Sorry, I was not involved in the Crusades. I was at home that night. I had a lot of homework to do and a test the next day. In fact, I don't even remember these Crusades. Apparently they happened sometime before I was born. What, 1953? So they keep telling you that. Well, we have a government that is just heck bent on bringing all of these people in here. In other words, to tell us that we have to do it because we're nice folks and it's the right thing to do. And yet, some of these people, yes, they could end up going out and killing us, as we've seen happen in some cities and other, even small towns around the country. Tonight, as we pointed out, there's a meeting of the Twin Falls City Council, and there's going to be a group there making its presentation. And they object to this on the local level, and they are holding a referendum in this community in Twin Falls about that coming up in May. Now, all of this said, you remember the release of Bo Bergdahl. Bo Bergdahl, his name a little infamous in Idaho, being that he is a local guy, so to speak. He's not far away from here. In fact, did he grow up? Well, yes, he did grow up, but apparently he grew up with some strange notions. He was swapped for 5 Taliban fighters. President Obama said, oh, we have to bring him home. We don't leave anybody behind. And even though he may have caused the death of 6 of his fellow troops, we're going to swap 5 cutthroats and bring him back home so he can then stand trial for all of his bad deeds. Oh, I didn't say that part. He's a hero, isn't he? Yes, because I don't like the military and neither does Bo. So these 5 guys got released and went off to house arrest somewhere in the Middle East. According to a website called Jews News, 3 of them have joined ISIS and are fighting right now in Syria and Iraq. I don't know about you, but didn't we know that was going to happen? Oh, no, they've all promised to me. I asked them, and they said, Mr. Obama, as our co-religionist, we would never do anything to upset you. No. I cannot fathom that they would then join ISIS and go about chopping off people's heads and crucifying Christians. Although, if I was given the opportunity, that might not be such a bad idea. So you've got this template going on. Secondly, Chuck Schumer, a radical liberal U.S. senator from New York State. I've met the guy on numerous occasions. Back when I worked in New York, used to see quite a bit of him. But Chuck Schumer, he's Jewish, and he has strong ties to Israel. He opposed the nuclear deal with Iran. Ray Kelly, the former commissioner of the New York City Police Department, Ray was in that job not once, but twice, under 2 different New York City mayors. Ray Kelly was speaking on a radio show in New York over the weekend, and he says, because Schumer did that and opposed the Iran deal, that the Obama White House has cut the terrorism funding for the city of New York. Now, you're thinking, well, hey, who cares if New York falls off the map, right? It's been hit twice by terrorists already in big attacks, twice at the World Trade Centers, 1993, 2001. And likely lots of smaller attacks have occurred there because people are looking for those weaknesses. So New York City, because of pure spite from the Obama White House, has had its funding cut. And I have a feeling that if Bergdahl, and I do believe he's going to be convicted, but I have a feeling that Mr. Obama is going to try to meddle in that and get the guy off and, send him home so he can go back to chomping granola and perhaps, campaigning for legalized marijuana in Idaho and become the face for Idaho leftists. Because there certainly aren't many people out there holding up that end of the leftist bargain in Idaho right now. 12 minutes after 9 o'clock, 37. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Got a caller been badgering me for the last several minutes, so we'll get to the caller. You're on the air.
That's me. I'm a badger. Anyway, Bill, I wanted to call in and agree with that guy on your one segment that says we got what we deserve with Donald Trump. We did. And I am so fearful that this day and age of digital media and everything else, that nobody's willing to do their own homework. If somebody yells something more than 3 times, then it must be true. And it's just mind-boggling to me. Your buddy at the Blaze, he did research. It says Donald Trump's only worth $3 billion.
Yeah.
But he's a winner. He's a big winner. But he's hung people out, including our government, for $6 billion. Now, that sounds like a winner to me, where he's lost twice as much as he's worth. So that already is like, he's an exaggerator. He's everything, but nobody wants to do their homework. All they want to do is he says something that makes them feel good, right down to, the sacks of between their legs, and then they think, oh, he's the one. If he goes up against Hillary, he will back down everything. He will let Hillary win, and we will all lose.
Speaking of the Blaze, I had a friend who went to her daughter's dance recital in Texas the other night and ran into Glenn Beck and his wife, who were there apparently with some of their own children, and actually got to talk with him for a few minutes and said he was very personable and polite. Beck and his team at the Blaze have been the only people really in media who have really been trying to take on Donald Trump with a frontal assault. And yet, and I know this too as well, even from Facebook, even if you post a story, even if I don't even endorse it, but if I post a story that's unfavorable about Trump, I get some of the nastiest replies from people that I've known in many cases for years. What bothers me, and after hearing about her visit with Beck, I dropped him a quick email. I don't know that I'll ever hear back from him because he must receive thousands a day. But I dropped him a quick email and I said, the thing about Trump, and I won't go so far as to say that I think he is resident evil, but I will say this. We really don't know anything about him or what he stands for. You would not go up to the canyon ridge and just jump. You'd take a look first before you decided to jump to make sure that you weren't going to break your neck. And we've got a lot of people out there who are just going along. And I also mentioned to Beck, I said, in 1933, the Nazis only won about a third of the seats in the Reichstag. So they didn't get a majority of the votes. But a year later, they were able to take control of the country through emergency decrees. And it's the people who backed them up in the streets. There were thugs in the streets backing them up. It's not so much Trump that bothers me. It's the nastiness of a lot of these people that are supporting him.
Well, that's true. But, and Glenn Beck has done exactly what you said. And he has done it to almost all the candidates. He has gone back through their history. He has got audio and typed stuff from them and what they have said from 2008. And the only one that has said the same thing in 2008 and he's saying today is Cruz, Rubio. All of them have flip-flopped more than you would ever think. And they are just despicable. Trump himself has been a Democrat up to 3 months before he went in to be a Republican, or maybe up to that day. But yet, if you listen to him very, very carefully, he's still saying the same thing. It's just slightly different to make you feel better about it. Now, who does that remind you of? The Democrats, that is famous, and he is playing their game right to the hilt. And guess what? He's succeeding. So obviously, their mind game works because it even works on a stupid Republicans that kept saying over and over that Obama got in because people just listened to his lies. Well, guess what? So is Trump. And he's getting in from the same people that complained about Obama. So I guess we get what we deserve.
Hey, thank you much for the telephone call. Also, just before going on the air this morning, I was reading a post at Patheos, which is a website devoted to a lot of folks who write about religious issues. And I read Father Dwight Longnecker every day, who I've mentioned on the show. Bob Jones University graduate, moved from evangelical, his belief is an evangelical, to Anglican, and then now is a Roman Catholic priest. But he's also a pretty good historian, and he had a column today where he went into some depth. And he explained about a culture and a society where people were angry with the elites. And they were angry that troops were coming home all maimed and they weren't getting, when they got home, their treatment was poor. And yet the elites kept getting richer and richer and richer and telling the people, don't worry, it'll be better for you in the long run. And eventually, a fairly wealthy fellow came along and he said, I'm going to set all of this straight. And it ended up breaking the Roman Republic. Caesar took over, Julius Caesar took over. Father Longnecker also jokes he had a bad comb over too. But Julius Caesar took over, and that was the end of the Roman Republic. The people decided at that point that they would go with a dictator who would tell them what they wanted to hear, throw them some bread, and sock it to the elites. And Caesar was vindictive, and he didn't like criticism. Yes, the parallels are just amazing. And we may be at that period now because people in this country, according to Father Dwight, people in this country sat back and they kept hearing, you're free, you've got liberty. But they realized the only way you really have that is if you can move around a little bit. And if you don't have any money or a job, you don't have any of that. So at this point, they're willing to jettison all of the promises that were made about a constitutional republic. And they're willing to go along with a strong man who will say, tell you what, I'll punch the bad guys in the face. I'll give you universal health care. I'll protect your Social Security. There are some things Trump has said that I agree with when it comes to illegal immigration and Muslim refugees and making sure that we're safe. But he's just appealing to people's greatest fears. And you know what? The other part of this is the establishment helped set it all up. Maybe not knowingly, but their actions brought us to this point. I'll take more of your telephone calls in just a few minutes on KLIX. I'll get to our telephone callers in just a moment, but I do want to remind you that our good friends at Tint Lady have a new business address, 127 Filer Avenue on the corner of Washington and Filer. This is a much more visible location, and we've been recommending that you get your windows tinted. Number one, it'll protect many of the objects in your home office or even in your automobile from the harmful UV rays that come from the sun that act as a bleaching agent. Also, it helps cool these buildings or vehicles in summer and will eventually pay for itself with some of the savings on your electric bills. You can actually give Tint Lady a call and set up a free estimate, 736-8469, or go online at tintladyidaho.com. This is a company been in business now quarter century in the area, locally owned and operated, open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday by appointment only. And remember, don't squint, get tint. We have a telephone caller with us. You're joining me, Bill Colley, on Top Story on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. Thanks for being the Paul Revere of southern Idaho.
Wow,
Bill,
that's
I grew
quite
up in
the
Detroit,
title.
and there are two suburbs, Highland Park and Hamtramck, surrounded by Detroit. Hamtramck was the largest Polish settlement outside of Poland, where they had the church Saint Stanislaus, who is the patron saint of Poland. Crime got bad. They had to lock the doors of the church because people were stealing things. They'd only hold it open for mass, weddings, and funerals. But the crime was so bad, people bailed out, and Muslims took over, and now they have speakers, and you can hear the call to Mecca certain times of the day.
Yeah, and the city council is now run by Muslims as well. Thank you very much for the telephone call. Hamtramck and Dearborn as well. I mean, these are cities that have been. What happened? Ford Motor Company back in the 1950s had a labor shortage. This country was in such a boom time that needed workers. So they were bringing in people from Yemen. They settled them in the area around Detroit, where of course, Ford had some large production facilities, as well as Lackawanna, New York, where my dad had worked at the Ford stamping plant. You had the Lackawanna Six. Remember their names? Those were the 6 young men who were plotting against this country about 10 years ago. Those are the sons and grandsons of those people who originally came over to work here in the 1950s. And you've had these same issues in places, Dearborn and Hamtramck. Folks, it doesn't matter. As we told you earlier, the Washington Post did a story last week that said Asians, and they're talking about East Asians, China, Japan, those particular countries, Korea, South Korea, not many North Koreans coming here, and Latinos, when they come here, they marry, they intermarry, and within a couple of generations, they don't even identify any longer as Latino or Asians. And the Washington Post was saying this is an amazing assimilation story, and yet third-generation Muslims whose grandparents came here from Yemen are looking to blow up buildings in this country and kill and maim their fellow Americans. Now, we've got to qualify that. We've got to say not all of them, and not even the overwhelming majority of them. In fact, the overwhelming majority is likely still looking for a job because those auto plants certainly don't provide them anymore. It's all assembly work now, and it pays a lot less, and there's not much of it. However, we seem to miss the point. This notion that you can have other cultures in this country that are running counter to the main culture, and that somehow we can survive this tug of war, it's baloney. 928. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I do want to remind folks, coming up Wednesday morning, we'll have one of the medical professionals, probably this week. I'm going to guess it's either Jeremy Daly, coming in from Tripp Family Medicine here in Twin Falls. Between 8:30 and 9 o'clock, we're going to be talking about medical issues on the air. This is an opportunity for you to touch base either with a doctor or one of the physician assistants and say, hey, I've got an issue. I need someone to direct me in the right way. Do I need to see a doctor? Do I need to go see a specialist? You have an opportunity to give us a call during that portion of the program. We do it every Wednesday morning with Tripp Family Medicine, which is located right here in Twin Falls, directly across from the main post office on Fillmore Street. And remember, life's too short not to feel good. We've got another half hour of the program on the way, and of course, we'll try to squeeze in some more of your telephone calls in the next half hour. That number is 736-0300, 736-0300. I need to mention this more often. You can reach me by email as well at bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. Last name spelled Colley. bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. And I normally give telephone calls preferences, but I do look at the emails. And occasionally, if I get a really good one, I'll share that with you on the air. If you don't want me mentioning your name, just tell me that early on in the email so I don't lose it otherwise. Hey, quickly. We were talking about Donald Trump in the last segment of the program, and some people just not sold on this guy. And once more, he may have 30 to 35% of Republican votes throughout this primary season, but it does not look as if he's going to get a heck of a lot more than 1/3 support. That's something we have to keep in mind. Eric Erickson had this piece today: I will not vote for Donald Trump ever. Trump believes the federal government should fund Planned Parenthood. Donald Trump believes there are good things child killers do. What is most damning is how so many are willing to be compromised by Donald Trump. I think that's a great point. I'm a Republican. I had been a Democrat when I was young and then a Libertarian for many years. I'm a Republican because the Republican Party said it would stand for life. If Donald Trump becomes the titular head of the Republican Party as president, I don't think that's going to stand any longer. One more half hour just ahead.